What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review podcast. Hanging out with Rob today. We were supposed to do this like a week ago, but I had some hardware issues with my computer and such, and we had to push it back. But man, it's been a while, dude. How you been?
Been good. It's been funny. We've been sitting on these albums for like a month. So it's like
Yeah,
I feel like I have a lot of familiarity just in the last month of having these records that I don't listen to all the time be kind of on regular rotation. It's a nice change of pace. We rarely focus on a region like this and a time
right.
period like this, so niche.
Yeah, it kind of accidentally happened. It was actually an accident based on like punk rock bowling and my enthusiasm for getting to see two bands that are radically different as far as my like experiences with them. As for anybody who's wondering, we're talking about the Damned, and we're going to talk about Cogsparrer Shock Troops. And so, we'll start that conversation here in just a minute. Just a disclaimer to anybody who's wondering. So I'm not an expert on anything. I don't claim to be. This is more or less a topical conversation. We are going to talk about the album and the songs, and then if something else comes up in it, so be it. But if we make a mistake, it is A, not intentional. B, we did do some research, but it wasn't into the life and time of these bands. It was more or less the album. So if we make a mistake, it's not on purpose. I did try to do as much research as I could. Time is limited right now. That's starting to fix itself, though. I'm having a lot more time at home, so this shouldn't be an issue anymore. But I do hear what people are saying. I do take it seriously. I wish people would also do the same for me, and they don't seem to want to most of the time. So just chill, man. Like, I'm not trying to piss nobody off. If I didn't want to talk about these bands, I wouldn't. So obviously I care. Uh, that being said, we're going to talk about the Damned first. And the reason we're going to talk about the Damned first is because I have basically never liked the Damned, like ever. Um, about a year ago, maybe a little longer than that, I started fooling around with like going back and listening to bands that I wasn't familiar with or didn't care about at one point or whatever, for whatever reason. Because I always got stuck in my own style of punk music. I didn't care about the older bands, and it wasn't that I actively disliked them. I just didn't have the time or desire to fool with it. I just was like, nope, I know what I like. I like that. No need to, move around outside these parameters. But what I've found out is, A, my tastes have changed a lot over the past like couple of years. And I think it was just because I'm getting a little older. But in doing this channel, it's given me the time and also the desire to go back and like rediscover things, try bands out. And it all really kind of started with the Clash thing. Like I accidentally stumbled across the fact that I had never heard their second album, which on one hand was kind of embarrassing. On the other hand, I was like, oh, this is awesome because I got to discover something that everybody told me existed that I just had never experienced. So when I was like, oh crap. So I don't know. People can laugh, they can call me whatever they want. I don't care, dude. I'm gonna keep doing my thing. I love this stuff. I love the music, and it's my whole life at this point. It kind of always has been, but that's the long way to say like I have really come to appreciate the Damned's music, or at least a couple of their albums. The Machine Gun Etiquette, I think that's their third record, I think, and then this one here, Damn, are the two that I really enjoy. Uh, And the reason that I wanted to talk about these records is because I was going to go see the Damned at Punk Rock Bowling, and so I had listened to it a little bit, and I was like, you know what? Let's cover an album that people might be surprised that I'm listening to, surprised that I enjoy. And so, I did a little bit of listening. I listened to the record a few times, but I also listened to and slash watched a couple of little mini documentaries about the band. So there's some things that I do want to bring up. I'm attempting to do this the right way, and I hope that I don't make any mistakes. But if I do, just let me know in the comments. And I'm being respectful. I'd appreciate that in return. Yeah. So as far as the Damned, Rob, how familiar are you with this band, and what do you like about them or dislike?
So it's not a band that I will say that I could tell you like what song was on every album and that kind of stuff. They've never really been that kind of band for me. I remember discovering them in the early 2000s just based off of their aesthetic. I forget what it was that I had seen them in, and I kind of always liked when I was younger, like that gothic aesthetic, even though as I grew old I kind of grew more into punk music. But I always like just that was like kind of the style that was sort of cool back then, and I always liked things that had that imagery. So I remember coming across the Damned in that way, and just knowing them as this sort of like this horror punk band or something like that. And it wasn't until a few years later, because then my familiarity with them happened to be guys like Captain Sensible and those guys like on a lot of documentaries. So for me, they were just an old band that I kind of categorized with a lot of the other older bands of the time, a lot of the older British bands. And it wasn't until I want to say years later, it was maybe like Matt Skiba, or it was either an interview that Skiba did or me in conversation with someone about Alkaline Trio, and them really saying, well, the band that kind of did that sort of dark pop punk thing first, the one that really created it, was the Damned. And so that led me to go and sort of reach back and kind of appreciate them. And I've sort of divided up into the two categories. It's like the punk rock stuff that we're talking about now. And then once they hit the 80s, they're really this big band in terms of like gothic style and that 80s aesthetic, and going beyond even punk rock. And they became more of a general use band as time has gone on, where a lot of different genres owe to them. And they're even old in terms of punk rock. Like they predate a lot of the old punk rock that we associate as like original punk rock. They're like as original of a punk rock band as you can get, with their own very unique style. That's just it's like their thing. Like the Buzzcocks are the super like boy band from the UK. You have like a working class band like Cockspur. You have the Pistols, which are the rebellious band, and this is sort of like the gothic Dracula band, is how I put this in terms of the UK bands. Yeah.
Actually, that's actually the best thing you could have said. The way you put all that was perfect, because we had incredibly different experiences like getting into this band, which I think is great because it makes for better conversation. I didn't even have the Alkaline Trio Damned connection until probably like 10 years ago, because it just never came up. So the way that I got interested in this band, or the way I was introduced to this band, was via being a fan of just punk in general, and having some old school dudes tell me like, hey, here's some bands you need to check out. This is how I just, heard for the first time Bad Brains, Minor Threat, The Damned, The Clash, all these bands from like the late 70s. It was through a couple of different people. And I remember like being introduced to them, not really feeling it, kind of not really paying it much mind. And then a few years later, when I'm closer to like, 20 years old, 21, I had seen the cover of this album at a record store, and I was like, why do I know this band? And I was still a kid. I was like 20, man. And I was like, whatever, man. It's in the punk section. I'm looking for something new. And I grabbed it. But the cover of this album has always looked as if it was from a time that the album is not. It looks like a modern, even right now, it looks like a modern album cover. The guys have style. They have style that tracks right now. And so when I bought it, I was thinking it was an album from whenever I was buying it. And so when I played it, I was like, what? And I just didn't get it back then. It is what it is. I liked what I like. I still like what I like. But I just kind of tossed it aside like, I don't like this. You know what the thing is a lot of what I like now is a lot more lo-fi and garagey sounding than what I used to like. I used to love a much more polished sound. As I get older and I get into more and more underground deep cuts, stuff produced by bands themselves on a low budget, all that stuff has a very specific sound, and I really adore that at this point in my life. And it represents something to me that maybe I didn't know I wanted when I was in my 20s. So I just kind of passed them over. But yeah, the Damned, they have now. It's kind of a technicality, but they do have the first UK punk rock single, and I believe the first UK punk rock album. Now, to my understanding, the Sex Pistols had already played shows, already had stuff recorded. It just wasn't released yet. But if you're going by the record books, the Damned are the first to do it in the UK.
And that's generally a factoid about them. That's like one of the things that people who kind of say after they are the actual original UK punk band in a lot of ways. Well, and it's funny because if we sort of stipulate that a lot of and we'll talk about a little bit of that difference with the band we're going to talk about next, but if we kind of have like the big bang of punk happening in New York in the late 70s, it's not just the Sex Pistols that started a band in the UK. It's a lot, there's like a whole scene. And you listen to this stuff too, it is very much in that thing that like without a doubt, all the British bands were trying to be massive pop stars, all the British punk bands in that early wave. And this stuff is sort of formatted in that way. And that's what's kind of funny about it is it's got a weird mix of being very UK, but also very like New York proto punk all at once. And I think that has like a uniqueness,
Well,
a
there's a
uniqueness
reason.
to it.
There's a reason for that. If I'm not mistaken, let's see. I wrote this down. I wrote down a few things just to make sure I had some like, again, factoids like in ready. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Okay. So when they put an ad in some personals, I think they were looking for a drummer. I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure they're looking for a drummer. In the ad, it said, must be aware of the music scene happening in New York City. And this is in like the late 70s, dude, like when they were first starting to get going. So, yes, they were very aware of New York. They were very much trying to maybe not mimic it, but they wanted to be a part of it, if that makes sense.
Well, and that's why I find this actually to be really interesting over the last week or a few weeks as we've been breaking it down. Is a lot of the earlier punk, I hate to say it, but it is so Ramones derivative because that's the only thing there really is to go off of. So there's so much of the early punk that we talk about where like half of it is very Ramone centric and the other half is original. The Damned is very, very little of it sounds like the Ramones. It sounds like a band that had much of the same influences as the Ramones. And so like, and I know there's a Stooges song on here and stuff like that, but that's what a lot of this stuff sounds like is the proto punk. It sounds like the Stooges, a little bit like the underground. It sounds like that mid 70s New York stuff more so than people that would have listened to a punk band and tried to kind of replicate that. It sounds a lot more original to me than some of the other bands.
I often just kind of don't spend the time arguing with people about where did punk come from, because in my opinion, it came from New York. Hard stop, like just New York. That's the answer, right? But if you really want to be like honest about it, it's the Ramones, and then it just immediately boom over to the UK. Because all the bands that we love, they cite their influences. I would say like 60, 70, 80% of their influences are all UK bands. Because in America, everything was a derivative of the Ramones. It was all just fast, sped up pop rock.
Well, and
over there,
punk was bigger in the we should mention punk was bigger and more commercially viable in the UK. So
because it took a different path. Like punk here, and I don't mean this to sound like in any way insulting, but like over here it was like organic and it kind of just became a thing because some bands started. Punk was almost manufactured in the UK. I would say that it kind of was. Like,
well, you can argue guys like Malcolm McLaren 100% manufactured punk rock in the UK.
Right. I mean, that's kind of my point. I don't mean that in like a disrespectful way. It just means that somebody had an idea and they thought, hey, I can spread a message because that's what these guys want to do. And I want to make some money. If we put us together, we can do these things. I don't see that that's necessarily bad. Some people might, but I think that happening, it gave a lot more attention to the punk. Plus, when the punk rock in America was just a bunch of snotty teenagers, they were thinking it was a phase. When it was like politically charged in the UK, they were like, okay, this could be a problem. And so it just got more headlines. It was just a much more bombastic thing in the UK.
Well, and it's still the case, I think, if you look back at the stuff, the American punk rock is more like internal. It's more that those sort of internal struggles and stuff like that. And the UK punk rock was more social and the social struggles and all that. And it's sort of the nature of the populaces too. Like you look at like who's a more like a protest nature and more natural to them. It's more of a UK thing. Plus, there is other avenues to do that. And it's just, I mean, it part of it's a difference of cultures and that side. That's a good point though, because like the American punk really is a club scene. If you want to put it was just the result of a club scene, and this is a lot more conscious, which is also why I think it's a lot more theatrical in the UK as well, because it's a lot more intentional in what they're trying to create. Yeah, and so and like you said, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And also, if it wasn't for all these little things that bursted out of the UK, we wouldn't have so much diversity of punk later on. Because a lot of that helped build that.
I didn't even used to understand this. I probably didn't know this till I was a full-ass 30-year-old adult. The UK may not have been technically first, but outside of the Ramones, they were doing it the best early on. They had all the bands that mattered until like the early 80s. For like 3-4 years, it was all UK stuff. American punk didn't really pick up and start moving until we got like hardcore stuff, like in the early '80s with Bad Brains, Minor Threat, Black Flag, stuff like that. So, like, did America light that match? Yes, but that wick and that piece of dynamite was over in UK, and if we started talking history of punk, we would probably spend the first 10 episodes talking about all UK stuff. And it's not, there's nothing wrong with that. I think some people get offended by facts. Some people want their team to be, dude, I don't have a team, man. My team is good music. So like, I think it's awesome. And I'm really grateful that I have the opportunity to go back and retry this stuff. And it's not like I get to make a first impression again, but I get to go back years after I ever cared to listen to any of this stuff and just try it again. And the fact that I want to do it and I'm not being forced to do it is it's a blessing, man, because it's given me opportunities to, like, think about if I was doing this for like a job or well, it is my job, but like if it was like a demand, I had to do this. This was my criteria. I had to meet. Boom, 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 boom. Man, I might still hate this stuff, but I chose to listen to it, and it was a good time, man. And honestly, I do want to spend a little time talking about their live set. So I've never seen the band play until Punk Rock Bowling, and I heard a lot of people say, like a lot of people tell me, like, man, their live set just, for a first time viewer, man, it was not what I wish they would have played. I had a blast, dude. I had a lot of fun. They did play a bunch of songs that I wasn't familiar with, though. I'll give people that. I understand what they're saying. They're like, man, they should have just played all the real fast, catchy, hooky
I was going to
songs.
ask, is it because of all the keys they use and stuff like that, and that sort of
They just
synthy
played
kind
a
of
bunch
stuff?
of deep. They played a bunch of deep cuts, man. And look, I'm not an expert on the band, so I couldn't even tell you what albums they were from. But I remember that half the songs I didn't know what they were, but then the other half I did, and so I had a lot of fun. And plus, dude, it was like perfect time of day. The sun was going down. They were on the big stage. I had a really, really, really like transformative experience out in Vegas, man. It might be something that in a couple of years I say it changed my life, man. I met some people that I never thought I'd ever meet. I got to just be around some people that I was friends with on the internet that I'm now personally real friends with. Got phone numbers, talk on the phone, like talk through text. That's important to me because everything that I'm doing is for community. Everything on this channel is for community. Why the hell would I start a zine if I wasn't trying to have a community? Like, I wouldn't do any of this stuff if it wasn't for a community. Because when I was young, I didn't have a community, man. Me and Chris Klink and I talk all the time about how we had completely different experiences, like entering into punk rock. When I got into it, it was dangerous. People were not friendly. It was a place where the outcasts went because we ain't had nowhere else to go. It just so happened there was also a lot of good music going on. But like, dude, I used to get beat up in my own city, dude. Like it was wild because we had North Side punks and we had South Side punks, and it sounds like a S.E. Hinton novel, but it's very true. It was like, and at 35, 40, 45 years old, none of us give a shit about that anymore. And we see each other out and we're like, oh man, can you believe we used to do that? Oh, we used to fight each other, me and this guy right here. And it's interesting, man. But yeah, I don't remember what I was talking about, honestly. We were talking about I had a point I was trying to make, but
we started talking about their set at Punk Rock Bowling.
The community thing, dudes, because I didn't get to have the community thing when I was younger. Is my point. Sorry. Yeah. I was like, what was I meaning by saying that? I was like, why did I even talk about the old days? Because back then I didn't have that. A lot of people did. Punk was different everywhere. And so it was not huge in Houston. Houston wasn't a big giant punk scene. It was like you was real gritty down here. And so as a person at this point in my life, I'm trying to really just create a place for people to feel comfortable. And these shows are really changing my life. These people I'm meeting at these festivals, these opportunities I've been given, man, I'm trying to make the most of it because I feel like it's I'm blessed to have it. I don't know what the word is. Like there's like I feel like I'm like, oh shit, opportunity. Better capitalize on this because if I don't, well, why squander this? Somebody else would be really appreciative, So that all being said, sorry, I tend to rant. Their set was excellent, and I had a blast. I think I would go as far as to say like I'm a full like fledged fan of the band at this point. I just ordered a copy of Machine Gun Etiquette so that I can have it at least at my store. I try to carry a couple of their albums all the time, just in general, but like I think I want to have it, listen to it first. I may end up keeping it.
You try to keep like the staples on hand, kind of.
At least on these. Look, I don't want to fake it either, man, and be like, oh, I got all their shit. No, dude. Like on bands like this, where I'm starting to get into them again, I own a copy of Give 'Em Enough Rope. I own a copy of Cell Tile Clash. Obviously I own the Sex Pistols album. I also own just a bunch of Coxbar stuff. That's probably the band from that era that I like the most, honestly. But yeah, dude, The Damned is an interesting band. I will say that when you listen to an album like this, it becomes obvious very quick that they're not politically charged, and that is something that makes them unique even in UK music. So like back when this was all going down, all these other punk bands it was mostly political music. Man, you had the Clash, the Sex Pistols. I mean, like, good grief, dude, it was all anti-government or at the very least it was politically motivated. And you had this band that was like, well, we're going to talk about what's happening to us. We're going to talk about the people that we are friends with and the relationships that we have, the issues that we're going through. It was very much more of a pop punk record than it was a like punk rock record. You mentioned that earlier, but I mean, that needs to be hammered home, dude. It's very obvious when you go listen to it. It's like, not really talking about kind of the things you associate with punk rock, which is a great thing, because I've always told people that punk rock and politics, they're not always like attached at the hip. There are many, many, many punk bands that don't have anything to do with political topics. But I mean, I do think there is also a massive amount of politics within punk.
There's a large association with it, but it's not an essential part of the.
Thank you. You said that way better than I did. What he said.
Well, and I think it's funny because like the Damned, whether they knew it or not, or whether those who have taken influence from them have fully appreciated them, they sort of set some of those songwriting parameters for bands that would have these kind of aesthetics. Think about a band like the Alkaline Trio. They have a lot of their songs are very much of the pop punk nature, but written from this like horror movie kind of perspective, or this exaggerated perspective, which is very 100%. Similar to what the Damned to what the Damned try to pull off. And I think even taking the Alkaline Trio thing further, I think they took influence from them even as the Damned evolved into their other forms.
For sure, dude. I've actually used that as an argument before I was even listening to the Damned. Alkaline Trio's not punk. I'm like, is the Damned a punk band? Yeah, I'm like, then how do you say Alkaline Trio's not? They literally different era, same exact thing.
I think it's a better analogy than a band like the Misfits, because the Misfits are almost like, I don't think the Damned are like, I don't think we would call them horror punk. Maybe you would, because they just more have those dark kind of themes to the way you wouldn't really call, even though you kind of would, like Alkaline Trio, horror punk necessarily, where I think someone like the Misfits or like the version of AFI we had for that little while, their whole aesthetic is like a Halloween kind of horror movie sort of aesthetic, which is it's a little nuanced, but it's a little bit different. Yeah, it's weird that because it's hard for stuff to, I think if you're full on like a horror punk kind of band, it's hard for you to do anything else but that. And I think a band like the Damned can pretty much do whatever, even if they have this sort of lane that there's.
Well, you have two factions of horror punk. You have the horror punk bands that are a horror punk band. Then you have the horror punk bands that like they're horror punk, but they also are just a punk band.
Yeah,
there are two kinds of horror punk, and I like all of it. I'm actually working with a band right now called the Misfits, and they do like an amalgamation of the Smiths and the Misfits. It's it's way better than I was thinking it was going to be. No, I didn't have any reason to think it wasn't going to be good, but like when I heard it and then I watched some of their videos, I was like, wow, this band is awesome. So shout out to those guys. But the Damned, they really did have an early. They had a hand in helping goth become a thing early on. Emo, I think emo, this might be like the first emo band, really, if you think about it. I mean, I'm saying that like tongue in cheek, but there's also some truth to it.
But it's like I said earlier, if you talk about the aesthetic that emo came to represent, like in the 2000s and stuff like that, it very much is in the vein of like what the Damned were doing.
Very MCR, MCR is very the Damned.
Yeah, that's another band that you could say, takes sort of direct influence that you know
100%
had the appearance too of like how they would present themselves, very similar.
So okay, a couple of things that I didn't know about the band. I never knew where their name came from. It came from a Luchino Visconti's film from 1969. It's a Nazi war film called The Damned. That's where they got their name from, if anybody didn't know that. I didn't know that until recently, unless that's just absolutely wrong, which will be pretty embarrassing, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. And the one thing that I always thought, or that I got wrong, was that New Rose is not about a girl.
What's it about?
It's about the burgeoning punk scene.
Oh,
Go listen. Once I realized that, or I was, told that through a documentary, I listened to it and I heard it through a whole different, like it was like it changed everything. I was like, oh wow, this song means something completely different than what I thought.
didn't realize that. That's their first song, right? Like that was the song. I think.
New Rose is their first single. Yeah.
I think it had a life of its own before like this album. Even though I know it's on this album, but it had like a life of its own
Yeah, I'm
before.
pretty sure. Yes, I don't know that to be 100% true, but I'm. If I was to ask that on like a game show, I would say yes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where they got the hype about them kind of really picked up with it's a single that did well, and then they had the full length shortly thereafter, like a year later, I think.
Something else about the Damned that is unique to them, especially back in the 70s. They were incredibly good at their instruments. Excuse me. They were good musicians. They were good at their instruments. A lot of these bands just were not. I mean, the Clash, I would say, were pretty good at their instruments, right? And there was some talent within the Sex Pistols, but a lot of these guys were just playing sloppy, and they didn't care about guitar leads. They weren't concerned about guitar tone necessarily. It was more aesthetic than it was musicianship, and just within their peer group, I think the Damned were one of the better bands as far as playing their instruments is concerned.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you said, it wasn't as valued in that time period.
Right.
In fact, if anything, it was kind of the sort of weird appeal of punk is that it was sort of accessible to almost everyone. It's not really till later on that like some of the really great musicians started to like felt like choosing punk or coming into punk, and now you have such great variety. It's also why this older stuff is like seemingly really easy to play when you tried to play it, because it's written relatively simple.
Well, people weren't doing the same things back then with the guitar that they do these days. Like they just don't. They didn't play them the same. They were much more simple. There's just now chords depends. I can't play chords very well just because I can't. But if you're able to play guitar, older punk stuff is relatively easy to play as far as I understand it.
It's easy to like memorize and to understand. Now to actually make it sound like it, that is very, very difficult. So like that Ramones style, actually, those bar chords, some of that, it's hard to replicate.
Oh yeah, well, because they were playing in a way that wasn't the right way, quote unquote. So like, it is hard to play it. It's just like anything else. If you're doing something, and 95% of people do it one way, and then one guy's like, "Oh, I do it this way." Well, that way is going to be hard to replicate for the rest of the group. But I actually want to go back and ask people, who were some of the musicians? Because I know for a fact that the Damned were thought of as better musicians than a lot of their peers. But who else out there was like thought of as a really good musician? Within this time period, let's say like up till like the early 80s. Is there a group of punk musicians that you really look up to that you think are great, or that were just known as being fantastic at what they did?
I think, and there's probably a few on there. I think X has a lot of really good members. I think like the guitarist specifically in X is like this like genius virtuoso guitarist that could have played any genre. I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's one band though that sort of has. I feel like nowadays you have more of these bands that you could.
Yeah, I'm thinking of.
You just feel like those guys can really play. Like, and
I'm more or less asking about specific musicians, because when I said that a minute ago, I was thinking like the Damned all were kind of good at their instruments, but there's other people in bands that were really good at what they did. And so like it's more or less like a right and wrong statement at the same time. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to anybody from any other bands, of course, but
you're gonna get hate mail from a bunch of like 80-year-old men saying, "How dare you say we couldn't play?"
Yeah, 1 second. My apologies. I think my wife is calling me. Let me make sure that it's not something I need to do. Oh, yeah, man. The Damned is a band that I think, I don't know if regret is the right word, but I do wish I had gone back to them earlier. I have no issue with being like, "Oh, I'm 19. I heard this, don't like it, moving on." I don't care. That doesn't bother me at all, because I think everybody's entitled to spend their time listening to what they want to listen to. But I do wish that I had the thought of, hey, I should go retry this again. It's been a few years, because I don't really do that often, and I'm starting to now. But I enjoyed them a lot live, and they're the two albums that I am listening to. I really enjoy. Yeah, there was a thing that happened that I don't know why I wrote this down, but I know what I'm talking about here, but I don't know why it would pertain to this video much, but it is interesting. You know, they were doing, I think it was a tour with the Sex Pistols. It might have just been a show, but the Sex Pistols ended up being told they weren't welcomed at a venue. I think it was just one venue. And they said, you know, we don't want the Sex Pistols anymore for whatever reason. It was likely politically motivated. And they said, but we do want the Damned still. And the Damned played the show without the Sex Pistols. And I guess for quite some time, they were labeled like punk rock traitors. I didn't know that. That's an interesting fact about the band that I didn't know. I think that's cool, man. If anybody has more to that story, man, please let me know. I think it's very interesting. I would love to know kind of more. I guess I could just do my own research on it, but you know, I do like it when people talk in the comments about this stuff. I love reading them. That's actually why it irritates me sometimes, because I do read all the comments like a giant idiot. But you know.
I did see there was a story. I think that they were supposed to be a support band on like what the initial UK tour that the Pistols were on, but I think a lot of those shows got canceled. And then I think the Damned were kicked off of that tour, and I'm not sure for what reason.
Dude, there was a bunch of drama going on back then.
Well, and I think too with these UK bands, I think there was probably a lot of headhunting going on with like trying to find the next stars out of all of these guys, all these young guys. And again, you have a lot of these puppet masters in the background who are all trying to, you know, make a quick buck off of all these guys.
Dude, anytime some young punk kid is like, that band's a sellout band because they signed to whatever label. I'm like, what are your favorite like old school punk bands? Give me 3 of them. Is any of them not on a big label? Like, and it's not because I have any issue with it. I have an issue with them having an issue with it. What who cares? Who gives a shit what label bands are on? If they're getting what they need to get out of it, that's where the question becomes a question. Are they getting what they need to get out of it? Especially back then, it was a different thing altogether. But like nowadays, is a band getting what they need out of their label contract? Like, then if they are, then who cares? If they're not, then they should renegotiate that. But you should always read all the contracts. My point being, though, is that like you want people to hear your music. That's what every punk band that I've ever spoken to, ever, and I'm talking, this has got to be hundreds. What do you want most with your? I want as many people to hear my music as possible. It's never once been, I want to make as much money as I can. It's always been, I want as many people as can possibly hear my music to hear it. And that only happens with help from other sources. It could be a label, it could be a platform of some kind, but it typically isn't just on your own. And so, yeah, they were doing a lot of that stuff. With labels were interesting back in the 70s, man. Being in a punk band wasn't like what it. Like, punk has changed. It's morphed a little bit. It's not the same. Back then, it was like a viable career opportunity if you could play your instruments right. You were like, oh, I want to be a punk rock star. That's fucking weird sounding to me, but it is what they were trying to do.
But I think it links back to something we talked about much earlier in the show, in that like how the there's that big wave in the UK in the 70s, and then like America takes back over in the 80s. And I think once the fad of punk rock had completely dissipated, you have in America where the local scenes started picking up that once they started to get it, we're never going to be big. We don't need the machine in order to be big. That's where you got that building off in the next decade. Really wasn't the case. Like to the extent that these guys were like they weren't DIY. They were social miscreants. So they lived
right
like the way you would think of like DIY, but it really wasn't I don't think they weren't really like the way we kind of like celebrate a band that can do everything on their own and to be self-sufficient and all that. I don't think they were quite looking at that just yet as a model.
As much as we all love and respect bands like The Clash, The Damned, Sex Pistols, and even the Ramones, they weren't Minor Threat. They weren't going out there and starting a label, starting a distro, touring in a van. Like, that wasn't a thing yet. And I think that punk rock started in America. It was a bunch of ingredients added to this pot. In the UK, it was the temperature was turned up and it boiled over. And then we got it back in America once it like was cooked down to here's a recipe. You start your band, you start your label, you press your records, you tour, and then it's all on you. Do you have the work ethic and then the ability to write good songs? You should be fine then. You don't need a big label. So I do think that it took a little. These are the training wheel years, 76 through like 82, maybe 81, 80. So a good 4 to 5 years, there was like training wheels, man. People were learning how to do it. They were learning. oh, I think this is a lifestyle than not just a genre of music for me. I don't think I want to be in punk for 3 years and then out when I'm in college and trying to graduate. No, no, no. I like this because there's a message behind it. I guess that's, yeah, man, it really did morph. I never really thought about it from this angle before, but it did morph in the first generation of punk music. There was a lot of changes.
Mm. You know, so this stuff's kind of nice though when you see it, that like the stuff all before that, because it is sort of the original concepts, and without the influence of the stuff coming before it. It's really interesting time capsule. Like, I don't think this record sounds that dated necessarily. I think it sounds like a certain type of sound, but it definitely is a time capsule into a certain, like a certain window, into a certain corner.
Yes, that's pretty accurate. It's like a certain, it's like a window in a certain time, and it doesn't sound dated. It's weird too, because if you'd have asked me 20 years ago, does this sound like an old album, I would have said yes. It's odd because you fast forward till I'm in my mid 40s and you go, does this sound like an old album? And I go, well, no, it doesn't. And I think it's because I listen to music a whole different way than I used to. I'm not really listening to it for like sleek production necessarily. I actually like a different production style than I used to like in my 20s. I like a different guitar tone. I don't need it to be screaming as much as I liked it when I was young. When I was young, I think that's what really captured my attention. It wasn't even the message, it was the feeling I was getting from the music, because I felt alone, I was angry, and I was hurting all the time. So when these dudes are yelling into a microphone, I loved it, man. So like the faster, the more pissed, the more yelling, I liked it. I wasn't getting that out of 70s punk. It just wasn't. We already had bands like the Casualties. We can't go backwards from that. It doesn't get like much faster until you hit the like D beat and crust punk bands, which I ultimately ended up liking too. So yeah, man, interesting stuff, man. So on their record that we were using as our topic of conversation,
Yeah.
what are some of the songs you really enjoyed?
Obviously the lead off song is probably the most famous damn song there is, neat 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 deep. And that's the thing with a lot of these songs. I could swear that these have all been in television commercials over the years. Every one of these songs sounds like they're that type of, and some of them have, and some of them are just that made that way. I like Born to Kill, big fan of that one. And then I really like what they have towards the back part of the album. I like See Her Tonight, One of Two, and So Messed Up, all in an order, all in
I
that
put those
exact
down
order.
too.
And I think it hits a little more of like the album is a little more over the place in those first couple of songs, and then it feels like there's a certain like focus in how the songwriting goes and thematically and stuff with all of those before they go back into the Stooges cover. But I really think they close that back end really nice on this thing.
Right. So I have basically the same stuff that you had, but I just added a few. I have I Fall as a song I really enjoyed. Stab Your Back I thought was good, short song, but I liked it. New Rose is a song that the more I learn about the band, the more I appreciate the song. Just I liked it already, okay, but like the more I learn about this band, the more I'm like, man, that song is really important. And then also when you look at it through the lens of the fact that it's not talking about a girl, it's talking about a scene that is so important to us. Uh, it becomes a little bit more important even then. So yeah, I think the album overall is really great. I'm glad that I don't know what you call it, coming around. You know, I have no qualms with the fact that I'm a surface level fan of this band. I don't. That's fine. I'm cool with that. I'm glad that I'm here. So yeah, anybody that's watching this, man, let me know what your favorite songs are. What are the deep cuts that you really like and why? I want to know why. Because oh man, this song's really good. Okay, so you just like it. All right, good. I won't even listen to the song. But if you go, oh, I like the song because the lyrics mean this to me, I will go back and listen to it because I'm interested in that. So if you have something to say about it, please say so. Yeah, The Damned, damned. Very good album. On a scale of 1 to 10, what are you thinking, Rob? You're muted, buddy.
I was gonna say probably in the 7 range.
Okay.
It doesn't hit quite a top peak because I don't think there's quite that density of just like blowaway songs. They're just like pretty good. But I wonder if I liked this style more, would I think it's like a 9 or a 10?
So I don't know that I could ever give this album a 10. I think subjectively I go with like an 8. I really do like it quite a bit. The more I listen to it, the more I'm like, man, I can't believe I was missing out on this for all these years. But and maybe it's because I'm having a little recency bias.
Mhm.
But I do think objectively you'd have to give this like a 9, man. It's The guitar playing is phenomenal. The lyrical content is much more my speed because politics stress me out. So like while they're very important and I do appreciate a good political punk band, this is timeless music that is not dated because they're not talking about a specific date and time within,
Mm-hmm.
popular culture. They're talking about things that were happening to them in their life. That stuff can be relevant indefinitely, and for that reason, I think that this album is probably about a 9. I think objectively, subjectively, that's a little lower for me because I like what I like, but I do really like this album now, and I think it takes a little bit of I don't know what you'd call it. It's sometimes it's hard to admit that an album may either be better or worse than you personally think that it is. But I think this is one of those times where it's probably a little bit better an album than I'm going to even give it credit for. But the guitar playing on it is pretty wonderful. I really like the guitar tone on this album. After the last probably 3 listens, I really was starting to. Here's the thing that I really used to hate doing, but I'm finding out that I need to just do it. Is that I have to listen to albums in their entirety 2, 3, 4, 5 times. That sucks when you don't like something the first time, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for me to be like, oh man, I didn't really care for that. Let me listen to it again. I'll give you a great example. The new Turnstile album. It blows ass. I hate it. I listened to it twice. I don't think I can get through it a third time, man. But I
Tough
did
listen.
do what?
For what you're saying specifically that album, it's a tough. Even I haven't made a determination on it either yet, to be honest with you, because it's a tough listen. Like I'm giggling because I know yes, whenever you have ambient noise for 5 minutes, it's kind of hard to get through the album.
Dude, it just sounds like fucking bare feet and granola. Like makes me so sad, bro. I'm just like, what are we doing here, man? But I was just using that as an example because that's an album that I recently listened to that I didn't care for. I gave it a second listen and I was like, all right, I can't do it. I'm not gonna go back on the band any more than I just did. But like, I do wish I could whatever goes in your head that makes you go back and listen to things multiple times. I wish I had thought of doing it much earlier on in my, life of listening to these albums.
I find that very hard though in our modern day. Like when I hear something new that I like, that'll because there's just so much stuff that comes out and it's so quick. I find it so hard to grab onto stuff. That's the thing. So I think sometimes when we go back, like what I like about like our show is that like whether I like it or not, I'm kind of forced to listen to it in that way to sort of keep reassessing and reappraising.
That's why I throw a curveball sometimes. As people, you and Nitty have both been like, "Oh, surprised you're picking this," and it's almost always because I'm like, "Yeah, I think I just need to. I don't ain't about want, it's about need. I think I need to listen to this album more." So, this album is going to go in rotation for me. What's funny is you mentioned something a minute ago about there's so much music coming out. I think that's a good sign of an album that is going to be great. If it's coming out now and you're so captivated by it that you've listened to it multiple times within a week. In the past year, there's only been a handful of releases outside of my own because the stuff I release, I really love it. So I listen to it all the time. So taking that out of the equation, that Puffer album last year,
I'm glad you said that one. I like that.
I said Puffer. I meant Slugger. Oh. Well, the Puffer album I'm fixed to talk about.
It's pretty good.
Well, okay, so the Slugger album last year was one like that, and then last Friday we had Puffer and Beton Arme both drop albums that I think fall into that category where I'm already heard them both 5, 6, 7 times a piece. Like I listened to them all day at work the other day. Like, so those albums are really great, and I think it's nice to have. It doesn't happen all the time, and a lot of bands put out EPs, and it's like, yeah, there's 4 good songs and 2 okay ones, which is still fine. But 4 great songs isn't an album's worth. So like that's easy to go, yeah, well, it's a good EP, but it's like, did you give me 11 great songs? That's hard to do.
That plays a role in it. I never really thought about that, but there's so much music, but the limited actually amount of release in that does, with so many of it being a single or 4 songs nowadays, that makes a difference. I also think you're like the only person in America that's putting out punk rock, because every time I find a new punk, it's from Canada, it's from the UK, it's from Australia. I don't know if it's not a thing in America anymore, but like every time I'm listening to new punk, without a doubt, I look and it's somewhere not America that these bands are coming from.
I'll say it like this. It's a combination of things. One, there's just a resurgence and a swell of punk music coming from other parts of the world that's just so good it's getting to us. But there's still a lot of punk coming out of America that's great. I mean, I deal with what 6, 7 bands right now, and I would say they're all quality. And then there's
Mhm.
another 20 bands that I don't have nothing to do with that I could just rattle off that are just. I mean, shit, dude. If you include hardcore to that, Haywire, man, they're probably the best live band I've seen in 20 years, dude. They're fucking fantastic live. Uh, and then I was wearing a band earlier called No Guard. That band's really good too. So the thing is that there's plenty of good stuff coming out of America right now, but there's just a lot of stuff from other countries that is so good that it's getting all
Mhm.
the way over here, and we're responding to it. So like all the
Yeah.
shit out of France, all the stuff out of Mexico, Canada, like there's just so much good. Spain's got a bunch of good shit coming right
I got
now.
caught in a Spanish ska algorithm the other day in my
Oh
Spotify, and
shit!
it's awesome. It's great. This old and like talk about a style of music that really fits well with ska music. I mean,
Oh yeah,
there's already accordions and horns in the music, so it
right.
really works. Yeah. No, I've really been trying to make an effort this year to listen to newer, not just listen to the same 30 albums for the rest of my life. And
Good for
I
you.
keep and I just keep like Puffer's one that it stood out to me recently, but it's so often that either I like female fronted bands or just female bands in general. And I think maybe we had less of that in the past. So that's something that's newer and a little more unexplored. Maybe there's more to say that hasn't already been said. And then it's
Right.
a bunch of bands from not just the UK. Like you said, Puffer, that's Canada. So it's essentially North America, but it seems like just from all over the globe is what at least also is being pushed on American audiences. That's part of it too. Like
Yeah.
what's picking up hype. And I think, yeah, I don't really know if there's a reason for that other than, and also in America, I might just be looking at the stuff from the American bands that I like, and there's more of an opening. I don't know
Right.
what it is. I don't know if it's me personally or what
It's
it
a
is, but
number of different metrics that go into that kind of thing happening to you.
yeah, and I just feel like there's a lot of the UK stuff feels I don't know, it feels like it's pulling me a little bit more right now or something.
Well,
Yeah.
the music coming out of France, the UK, like UK, England area,
Mhm.
and Spain, bro. That's there's a lot of great shit coming out of Australia too. Let me not forget
Mhm.
Australia. People are probably already in the comments going, "Ammo and the sniffers." Blah, fucking
Mhm.
yeah, I get it, dude. They're yeah, sure. But like yeah, man, it's interesting. We're living in a weird time. I think technology helps that a lot too, and all these social media apps are helping get music over. I think MySpace really uh, changed how we ingest music, and
Mhm.
I think for the better. People can hate Spotify all they want, but it does help bands. You got to put your work in too. But in people are like, oh, they already made the music. That's not the work. That's the fun part. The work goes in after that. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned the like females in punk because I'm actually in the process of working on what was supposed to be one video called "Women in Punk." It has turned out to be "Women Are Punk" parts 1, 2, and 3. God damn it, Rob! It's gonna be like 2 hours worth of shit, dude. I'm like in the middle. I'm reading like 3 books right now, bro. What in the fuck? I'm reading to do this
I
shit. What are
like
we?
this.
What's?
I like
Yeah, I
this.
know, right? These are gonna be big ones, man. I got. Hopefully, I'm gonna have some people talking to me to help me that were from,
Mhm.
women that were from the punk rock days of old that are gonna help me. I got some people I reached out to. I would love to talk to Kathleen Hanna. I'm in the middle of reading her book, and everything that I'm reading, I'm thinking like, dude, if she will just let me say like 2 sentences to her, it will make enough sense to where she'll agree to do the show because she's going through, or excuse me, I'm going through all the things that she went through as far as like trying to get people to talk to her and interview with her. She dealt with all this stuff. So I'm like, oh, she's going to be empathetic to what I'm having to deal with doing this. I fucking hate asking people to come on the show, but it's part of it, man. It just is what it is. I like talking to people, but asking them to come do it, oh, it fucking sucks, man. It took me like 3 months to reach out to Jake Casualty, dude. Like, I'm just like, this fucking guy's going to tell me to kiss his ass. And I'm like, oh, man. But, he's probably a super nice guy. And also it sucks to get ignored, and that happens a lot. So, but yeah, Women in Punk, dude, coming. Women Are Punk, excuse me, parts 1, 2, and 3 coming hopefully in the next couple of months. All right, man. Let's shift over to Coxbarrer.
Right.
Finally, only after an hour, right? Okay, so this is a weird one, man. In 1982, we get the album Shock Troops by the band Coxbarrer. It's widely talked about as their first record, but it's also not. It's their second record. But they had like their first record came out. What was it called? It was called True Grit was what they released it as in in 87 in the UK. But it was on Decca Records, I believe, in the 70s. Like it was
Mhm.
a bunch of like I guess early demo tracks. I don't actually know. I up until fairly recently, I knew it existed as True Grit, but I didn't realize it was put out before that in a different part of the world. I
Well,
just didn't know that.
yeah, and I think, and I may have this incorrectly, but it was one of those classic kind of like cash grabs, so to speak, by a band where the music they were making in the early 70s sounded a lot like this new cool thing called punk rock that was coming out. So I think they got together a lot of their music very quickly to distribute it, and it was like a flop, from what I understand. Like
Oh wow.
it just I don't know if it was like, I don't know the details of how it went, but I don't think it really panned out to like what they were trying to do with it. That's why it's sort of, I think, doesn't really even get acknowledged as much as their opening release, even though, like you said, by the time this album that we're talking about came out, they'd been a band like officially for like 12 years.
Yeah, they were a band for a long time. I think closer to 10. I believe that what I read was 72 was when they started. Could be wrong. So
Right, early 70s. Yeah, it's
let me throw out another disclaimer because this is inevitably going to get cut into two videos. So I need people to understand this, dude. I am not an expert on any of this stuff. I'm just a fan of the band. We're talking mostly about this. We're talking about the band due to the fact that we're covering Shock Troops, and I just saw them play in Vegas for the first time. So nothing that I'm saying is meant to be anything other than incredibly respectful. I really love this band, but I was stuck in that. I've come to realize that when I was young, the reason I don't have all the like little bullet points and factoids on these bands is because when I was young, I just listened to the music and I didn't give a shit about like learning about the bands because I didn't have time. I was always working. When I was like 15 years old, I had a job and I had a lot going on, and it was never like I had the time to go like talk, and I didn't have a lot of friends. The punk scene wasn't real big down here. Like it was okay for a while, but it would come and go. It had swells, and then it would dry up a little bit. My point is that we weren't sitting around talking about the history of these bands. We weren't sitting around talking about the lyrics in the albums. We were writing our own albums. We were playing our own shows. And I think that led me to have a different way about going about listening to albums and studying bands. I didn't do any of that. So I'm just now getting to it. I don't know. It's interesting, man. It's a weird thing to realize, like, oh, I guess I should have known all this stuff a long time ago. Had I had a different, I guess, avenue of getting here, I might have known it all. But I would love to talk to Colin, the singer of SPARRER, one of these days, and just hear from him exactly the history of the band. I mean, I know a little bit about it. I know that they were a band from the early 70s. They broke up a couple times. Shock Troops is their like actual coming out party. But every time you mention it as like their first album, people are like, no, it's their second album. And it's like, yeah, kind of. But it's kind of, they're not. It's kind of their first album.
Yeah, and then they had like they had some songs in circulation around like the early punk era. They just didn't really have like a full-blown album. And I don't think they were as consistent in that time period as they started picking up a lot of steam as the 80s and Oi and all that really starts to get cooking. Then they're sort of referenced back to, and they sort of pick up that following almost in reverse. And that's what sort of spurs on the 80s era of Shock Troops.
Well, yeah, in the early 80s, they started having songs of theirs show up on like Oi compilations and things. But, you know, I think as far as I understand it, they weren't even really like a punk band at first. They were more of like a pub rock band.
Yeah,
And they were like,
I think that's their actual genre, really. Is like their base genre is pub rock. And I mean the differences between pub rock and punk rock, I think, are probably fairly small. Like we just talked about the New York punk basically being a club rock scene, and I think
right.
That this is kind of similar. I don't really know what pub rock is. I just assume that
Dude, I've always felt like that. Like, okay, pub rock. I kind of can tell you when I hear it. I think I know what it is. I couldn't describe it to anybody. I'm like, fucking, I don't know. Like in between AC/DC and bands I like, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think of it as like a sloppy version. I don't know. I don't really know what it is exactly. Although, like, if you were to give me this blind, I don't know if I would say pub rock because nothing at the top. But if you ask me, like, what genre this, I think pub rock would be a good way to describe it. And I might even say that above like punk rock necessarily, although it very much fits into a punk rock framework. So I don't really know. I would like, someone in the comments maybe to describe how similar like this sort of core bass punk rock that like SPARRER does is with like that pub rock style.
So what I think it might be is more of just a straight rock and roll, because like when I hear SPARRER's songs, there's a lot of punk bands that I think fall into this. I'll be like listening to it and I go, man, this is some fucking good rock and roll. Like it's just good rock and roll. And I think that might be more of what it is. I think it's just like more of a gritty blue collar rock and roll sound that you get from guys that would play at a pub, I guess. I honestly don't know. I feel kind of dumb, but like I don't really care, I guess. But it's interesting.
Well, it's interesting because I kind of want to just know what it is, because it's a term that's thrown around a lot, right? And especially with the UK stuff, and you take it for granted. Their music though does kind of sound like a bunch of guys who are in a cover band who decided to write some originals. That is kind of the vibe that they have.
Oh, dude, their songs are so catchy. It's absurd how catchy their song. Like it's interesting to hear a bunch of like relatively like tough, not angry, but like tough, like hard-nosed dudes that or working class fellas sing songs that are just so fucking catchy, man. Like
the image of this style of music in your head, and then when you hear these songs, it completely is out of balance, isn't it?
Dude, I hear that all the time, but I hear it about SPARRER a lot. And I'm like, dude, it's great, isn't it? And they're like, no, I love this shit. Like, dude, even Charlie, my 10-year-old daughter, was like humming around this. She's like, I like this. What is this? I'm like, dude, this is where Dad's gonna go see it in Vegas. She's like, oh, this is cool. And then they played Shoot 'Em All, and she's like, okay, that's not so positive. We're talking about how all our songs were really positive. And then we got to that one. She's like, okay, that's not so positive. I'm like, but it's catchy. She's like, it really is. I'm like, dude, everything they do is just like, they're really good at writing melodies, like these really simple melodies, and then adding intricacies on top of that to make the song, you're unique in theirs. But Shock Troops is a record it'll fuck you up, man. If you're not ready for it, it'll blow your mind. Because look, here's the thing with music, and I think this goes on like all kinds, all styles, all genres. If you don't like the person's vocals, you're not gonna like the music.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like the vocals on this with this band, which I do, it's gonna fuck you up because it's gonna change your world, dude. It's rarely do you get an album that you go, oh yeah, this might be the best song on the album, and it's like song 1, and then by song 5, you're like, oh shit, that was 5 best songs on the album in a row. Okay, and then they just keep going. Like I don't say this very often, but this is like a perfect record, man. There's nothing about the record I would change. It's the perfect length. It's got the perfect sound. The audio quality is great. The engineering was done right. The mix is really good. The guitar playing is top notch. The lyric writing is A1. But everything about this record is awesome. And if I have to be honest, I've been a fan of SPARRER for what, 25 years or so. Most of my fandom was Shock Troops. I need to look. I listened to Forever whenever it came out. I don't even know what year that was though. Let's see here. I have the thing pulled up. Yeah, so Forever came out. That was only like 8 years ago. Let's see. Yeah, I liked Guilty as Charged when it came out. So that was like a mid-90s one. So I guess that was probably the first one that I heard because it was the new record. No, I think I heard Shock Troops first. And then Guilty as Charged was the most recent one. Two Monkeys is the one that I never heard much until recently. Here We Stand I liked because I was a Captain Oi fan. I was getting stuff from that label. But I mean, they've only got, for a band that's been out this many years, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 records if you include True Grit. That's including the one that came out last year.
I don't think they've been an extremely active band for all this time. They have a lot of years of inactivity, and so that kind of explains they're not quite as prolific of a band as other bands who have been around as long. With that said, the limited amount of quantity I think helps keep their reputation intact, and that you don't have a bunch of dud albums. You don't have 20 albums out there.
That's valid. Yeah, because I mean, I think somebody could be a fan of this band for 30 years and still only really have heard Shock Troops. It's a
Yeah,
classic album, dude.
I mean, it's not uncommon in punk though to like whether Operation Ivy or the Sex Pistols or of any genre. It's the most like I think one album genre that you can find that stuff that people will swear by. You know,
That's true. I've had people that told me they were fans of Rancid and had never heard Out Come the Wolves. That happened like recently. I mean,
wow.
dude, the kid was like 19 years old, bro. He's the only album he'd ever heard was their newest one and Indestructible.
Oh,
It fucked me up, bro. It had me on tilt for like an hour, but I couldn't figure it out. I was like begging this kid, like, you have to go listen to their old material, man. But like, I don't know, man. I guess I do have like imposter syndrome. Like I feel like I'm not good enough all the time. I talk on a video all the time, but dude, I've got anxiety and self-esteem issues like most people. So like
mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm cool. I know I make mistakes. I don't think I necessarily belong here. I'm always feeling like I don't do a good enough job. Even though I put all my effort into it, the comments will fuck you up, dude. You get 100 nice ones, you get one dude that just shits all over you, and you're like, fuck, dude, maybe I shouldn't even be doing this. In reality, that dude's just an asshole. But this album really did affect me, man. And seeing them play live, oh, dude, I haven't gotten like teary-eyed emotional in a long time at a show, dude. That one had me all a mess. The festival set,
Mm-hmm.
it was really great. And I got close to feeling like that. I was like smiling real big, and my friend was hanging out with me, and I got close to being like, oh man, this is amazing. Not quite there, right? On Monday at that club show, it was shoulder to shoulder in that place, dude. You couldn't move. It was so packed. They were telling people if you go outside, you can't come back inside. Like you go smoke a cigarette, you staying outside. And I think they oversold the venue by a lot. Like I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a show that was like a club that packed.
Mm-hmm.
It was. I thought, man, I hope this doesn't have like a fire, because if we do, it's incredibly dangerous. But yeah, dude, it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had at a punk show. Somebody told me before I went, hey, dude, you've never seen SPARRER? And I went, no. They're like, oh, dude, it's something else, because every song is like a sing along. And I wasn't sure how accurate that statement was. And then they started playing, and every fucking song, the crowd was just like singing along, and there's just fists in the air the whole time. Man, it was beautiful, dude. It's exactly what punk rock is about, man. Every song was a banger. And then, I mean, they played like 80% of Shock Troops, dude. It was like they played like it was a beautiful experience, man. It was a transformative show. Fuck, dude. I hope they see this video and go, shit, I do want to talk to that guy, because I'm telling you, man, it was one of the greatest experiences of my whole life, dude. It was well worth the travel, the wait. It was worth it, man. These are the kind of things that you need, this stuff in your life. We've both had them, different times and places, different bands, but we've both had these experiences. But I don't think well, I guess everybody that listens to music of any kind gets this feeling at some point in their life. I hope so. But yeah, man. How much have you listened to the record?
So I knew a few of these songs. I had never gone in and listened to the record from beginning to end. I knew quite a bit of these songs, but it just wasn't one that I had ever sat down to actually do that with. In my mind, was Lars ever in this band, or did he tour with them?
No. So, man, I'm gonna get this wrong and be fucking roasted. But if I'm not mistaken, SPARRER hit 40 years the same time Rancid hit 20. And I think they did like 4 or 5 shows together, celebrating like their anniversaries together. And maybe Lars had some production stuff. He played with
he was in the UK subs. So maybe I'm just twisting those. Like in my mind for years,
no, but dude,
this was the band that Lars is in.
Tim and Lars have both worn SPARRER shirts many times. So like,
I would say my familiarity with them, that's where it really started, is with the Rancid guys, because they are like such big proponents of this band.
So there are 2 key moments that like introduced me to this band, and they both are from the same person. This girl that I was friends with back in the day, she was like your prototypical like attractive punk girl. All right, big mohawk, crazy sexy clothes. So anything that she was into, all the guys were like, what is she like? I like that too. And she always wore, and I mean, I was young, dude. like this is just platonic friendship with her, right? She always had this like tank top on. It was a yellow. I'm pretty positive it was no, it was a white shirt with red print, not yellow shirt. It was a white shirt with red print, but it was a tank top, and it just had the Coxbar logo with the wings. And actually, I think we're saying it way wrong. So I talked to Colin McFowle's daughter, Hannah. Shout out Hannah. She was super sweet. I'm pretty sure it's SPARRER, like Coxbarra, and we just don't have the right accent to say it right at all. But I've been trying it all day. Coxbarra. I think that's how you're supposed to say it. But I think with an American accent, you just it's almost like you have to like make yourself say it that way.
Those
But,
hard R's that we do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's SPARRER. I believe. I might be wrong about that, but I'm trying to pronounce it correctly just out of respect for the band. But this girl's wearing this shirt, and I asked her, like, what's up with this shirt? I didn't know it was even a band. I just thought, honestly, with the first word being cock, me being like 17, I was like, it must be a dick joke. Whatever. She's like, oh, it's a punk band. And so I naturally went to find out about this punk band. And she liked a bunch of like street punk, dude. She had like a big mohawk and shit. And like she was into like a Global Threat and shit. Like she liked real street punk music. And so I really thought it was going to be kind of like that kind of music. And so, it's funny. I think I have to credit her with me even liking this band because all these other bands, I had the same kind of thing. I thought they were going to be really fast punk. I listened to it and I didn't like it. That goes for the Clash. That went for the Damned. A lot of bands, right? But I think it's because she liked them, I was giving them more of a try because when I first heard it, I was like, oh, that's not what I thought I was going to get. And then also, man, look, if you can make it through one song, you'll realize very quickly, like, oh, these guys can write a melody. And I like catchy music. So like I guess there's a combination of those two things. But I was getting interested in them. And then that same girl, like soon after, she's like, we're talking about music, whatever. And she's like, oh, what'd you think about Coxbarra? And I was like, I like it okay. And she's like, your boys in Rancid love this shit. And I think that was what made me go, oh, really? And then I started noticing it on their clothing and pictures and things. And I took a liking to it after that. But I mean, you get where you get how you get there. We're all frauds, dude. We're all posers, man. Everybody, we're all just. You can tell I'm self-conscious even talking about this shit, bro. It's weird. It's weird.
Well, yeah. Like even I had to say, like, I've never actually popped this in. Like, I never popped this into this CD player. Like, I knew of it and I knew some of these songs. Like, I've nenever actually sat down and really done that.
It surprises me, yet at the same time it doesn't, because I was a little surprised that you had listened to the Damn stuff, but I guess. I know you mostly were in a like late 90s, early 2000s wheelhouse with like your core stuff, right? Like Epitaph Fat, Hellcat. So like I'm only like one rung below that. Like, I like the Casualties of Global Threat, but like there's a lot of, Grimple, Bay Area stuff, but we both like that stuff to a certain degree. Dude, I'm not. This is why I always say I'm not an expert, dude. I'm not, man. I don't know every band that ever existed, dude. It's impossible to do that.
Well, like I've learned that talking to you is I had never really met a lot of like the Oi fans and stuff like that. Like to me, that's always been sort of the music that the Rancid guys listen to. Like I never had a lot of contemporary people who were really into those bands, other than like. Like, oh, from Casuals is coming, and everyone wants to go see. You know what I mean? So that's always been
because it has like Lars in it, right?
To that kind, it's like that, and explaining to people that these are skinheads and not Nazis and all that kind of like. It seems like that's like a lot of where that has sort of been for me, and like I've seen with you more of an exploration of the music itself and the deeper dives into the specifics. I think like maybe like how some people have like they know about all these old ska bands, but they never actually listened to any single one of them. That's kind of how I feel with the Oi stuff in general.
Dude, even I felt like that for a long while. Maybe not in the last few years, but like 10 years ago, I definitely felt like that because I knew a bunch of the bands, but I only knew one or two songs for most of them. I had the Captain Oi compilation. I didn't have much else other than that. But like as I get older, this is the music that really resonates with me because the topics have switched. I don't have as much in common with, angry 20-year-olds as I do a guy that's trying to make his mortgage payment. You know what I'm saying? And since that's the case, these lyrics, that's the big divide between Oi and like punk, if you want to call it. They're one and the same, and they're also very different. And I think that's the big divide, though, is that you have one genre that really is focused on like youth movements and political stuff, yada yada, right? Then you also have one that is firmly planted in like I don't know how to say it, dude. Like just like being an adult, like the trials and tribulations of a working class
Like,
person that doesn't have a lot of money.
class politics, you might say. Yeah.
Class politics is a great way to say it, bro. You're way better at just talking than I am. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the big divide is you have one group that's more politically motivated. You have one that's just everyday life, and I think that they both mix great, and they make
Mm.
great tours together. They also have great split albums, and you have bands that have a little bit of both. I mean, I think most punk bands have a little bit of that in there, and most oi bands have a little of that in there. But I think by and large, that's where they kind of sit. And then obviously the aesthetics are different. But I was listening to a guy the other day talking about skinheads can't be racist because you wouldn't have skinhead culture without Jamaica. And I was like, fuck, that's a great way to put that because it's so true. Because, the original skinhead music is not oi music, it is reggae, it's ska. And, a lot of folks don't know that. And they certainly don't know where that music comes from.
It's a complete side note, but there's a lot of like academic scholarship that notes that how much punk rock is another like what do you call it, like diversion of a lot of points of black culture that are pulled into like this transformed culture. And I think a lot of it has to do with like the UK scenes and a lot of these guys and a lot of that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of that we don't think of as much in America because we think of punk as, again, just like the Beach Boys on crack, and we don't really analyze it to that greater the way we do with like general rock and roll, where we kind of acknowledge like, yeah, Elvis Presley is black music taken to a white audience. Like that's really easy for us to understand it in that kind of way. There's a lot of elements of punk and the history of punk that have similar connection points of blues and R&B and all that kind of stuff that we don't quite always think about as much as explicitly.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. I've always kind of considered it, and I don't really put it as like, oh, it comes from a like black music more so than it's a class thing, like you said a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been about class. Punk rock in politics, they're not really about black or white. They're not really about left or right. They're really about money.
Mm-hmm.
So either poor or you're not poor, and it just happens that a lot of the black communities are below the poverty line. There's a lot of communities of all shapes, sizes, colors that are below the poverty line, and I think that's what rock and roll has going through its veins, man. Rock and roll, the blues, and jazz, all that stuff is punk rock. It's all about class, and this music is for working class people. Every song on this album is for working class people. It's a beautiful record, man. It's a fucking beautiful record. I love it, dude. It's like. So Coxbar over the years have gone from being like a band I really loved to a top 5 for me. And I don't say that lightly because my top 5 rarely changes, like rarely. But it's gotten to where they're probably number 4 on my list, like all time, full stop. Like they're just, even, what made them move up the list is that once I listened to all their other records in addition to Shock Troops, like over and over and over, I was like, holy shit, their like entire discography is like this. It's not like they have a great album and then a bunch of other pretty good albums. No, dude, like every album is like this. Even their latest one, Hand on Heart, it's the same quality of music. It's kind of wild, dude, honestly, like how they keep writing these really great. But I mean, these dudes have been friends since they were little kids. Like the band has been friends, as far as I understand it, since they were like 11 or 12 years old, maybe younger. And I mean, when you have people that you've known your whole life, if I went and got my like 4 oldest friends and started a band, I guarantee you we would write some really important music
and have like chemistry that you could really build off of. And
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There is a certain simplicity to this music though that I think would really lends itself to, again, like 4 guys who have just known each other forever that can come up with this. And I think you've said it several times. The genius is in the melody and like the catchiness, the kind of pop sensibilities that this ends up having to it. With the limited instruments of a garage band, though, that's what makes it very, very impressive. It is just bass guitar and drums doing all of this.
That might be where the pub rock thing comes into play, because it does sound like a dudes that are at a jam place, like hanging out playing music, and like they're very competent with their instruments. That includes Colin with his singing. I
Mhm.
just watched them play twice, dude. That guy knows how to sing.
It-
Whether
It's
you like his
something,
voice or not, that's between every person. That's up to them. But like, I love it.
but he has that quality that some bands have, where it's almost because it's a soft-spoken way of vocals, it causes you to listen. You sort of like you pay attention because it's not bah, 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 in your face. You know that
Yeah,
he's kind of speaking and he's singing. And he's got that that accent that makes it real like proper sound, at least to our ears. And so it does sort of, you sort of perk up and listen. And then but then like you said though, it's mixed really well. The instrumentation is done really well
dude.
to fit the songs. Those guitar leads are like perfect and never too pitchy for
Right?
what they're
And
doing.
dude. Honestly, I kept listening to it. Like, I've heard the record a lot of times, so it was almost like, okay, I need to go make sure I sit down and listen to it again to refresh my memory. And I'm thinking, like, if you'd have asked me, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, hey man, how much guitar work is in these Coxbar records? I'd be like, I don't know, maybe a little. No, man, there's a lot. It's just so well done, and it's so like seamless that you don't. It's not like, oh, and then there's this like insane 3 minute guitar solo. That's not what they're doing. But they have like really good licks and really good leads all throughout their songs.
Yeah, it doesn't dominate the music, but it's kind of like if you go listen back like 1950s music when there's a really good guitarist in there and
Right.
they're doing a lot of that stuff to really accent the entirety of the song. There's a lot of that here. It sounds very tight. Like like obviously everything on record sounds tight when you put it on record, but like something about this kind of comes through as a certain cohesiveness. Maybe because it's the sound where it's almost some of the instruments are non-distinctive from each other because it just sounds like a piece of music the way good music is supposed to.
Well, when you hear this album, you can hear the influences they had on bands like Rancid that you
Mhm.
didn't know that you're like, oh, I didn't know that this song really clearly influenced them. And there's a lot of that throughout this record. You can hear like, especially like Let's Go era Rancid, and then also like later Rancid. You can hear a lot of Coxbar, especially their last like 3 albums. They've got a lot of that very simple rock and roll stuff going on there in their albums.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, man, I think this is a band that needs to be cherished, and uh, I'm very grateful I got to see him play. That was my whole reason for going was to
Mhm.
go see Coxbar. I would have went if that was the only band I was going to see. I still would have went. Um,
They,
yeah, it
they
was
f- they
awesome.
feel like a piece of, even though they're not that notable, they really feel like a piece of rock history, though, don't they? They feel like,
I think they are that notable though,
yeah.
because like it is maybe it's because they're not this famous huge band. But go watch some of the footage from their live shows. They always were packed, dude. And I think what's old buddy that managed the Sex Pistols names again?
Malcolm McLaren.
Malcolm McLaren.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, he was supposed to, or they was in talks to manage
Yeah,
Coxbar at some
I think he
point.
scouted them or something like that.
So I mean, like that tells you a lot. And whether what the reasons were he didn't do it, I don't know. Maybe they didn't want him to. I have no idea. But yeah, they're like this band that sits in this weird place. They're like legendary, but they're also not like rock stars.
Mhm.
But I think that kept them grounded, and I think it kept them putting on good quality shows, kept them bringing good quality albums, and appreciating their fan base, which I don't know, man. I personally like that better, but that's who knows. They may have been like, "Fuck that! I want 20 million," and you can't blame them. But
Mhm.
I can't imagine them saying that. I feel like they probably are pretty appreciative of their career. Um,
Yeah, and I think a lot of genres of music have those kind of like cornerstone bands that are just that will
yes,
go that people will say like, oh yeah, I saw them 30 years into their career and they were amazing and they had a packed house and maybe people weren't aware of it and they hold that. But I mean, you think about even what they did recently, uh, being a top headliner on an American show like that. I know that audience would be more catered to them, but that still really shows the weight of both the bands we talked about today and how much they still really can kind of carry and kind of command, because those Cockspire sets, like you said, there was big buzz about that though on social
man,
media and everything when that was happening as just an event.
it was amazing, dude. And I also live streamed the club show. I was
Mhm.
working my ass off, dude. I don't think people really understand what it is that I go through when I do this shit, but I don't do that for all of them. But that was a special one, and I wanted people to be able to witness it with me. And everybody that watched it, dude, I appreciate it. It was a lot of work, and it was, kind of a hectic filming, but it just was one of these moments I'll never forget, dude. What's funny is they also have their own sound. Coxbar has a sound that's not. So somebody told me something the other day that while I did argue with them, I also understand their point. They were like, Coxbar is not an Oi band. And I was like, well, no, they're not. They are the Oi band. Like, I feel like they're like almost the originators of a sound, but it's just like punk. Oi, uh, it evolved and it changed a little bit. It doesn't sound the way that it sounded in the early '80s now. Well, neither does punk. So, like, I do think that they are a cornerstone or a foundational, whatever you want to call it. They're a band that's incredibly important to not only punk but Oi music. And these dudes started as one thing, and they had the resilience to push through it and find what they wanted to do. I don't understand why anybody would have an issue with that. I think it's pretty admirable to start a band and just be like, yeah, we just want to play rock and roll. And then later on, you find out like, oh, we like this kind of rock and roll. And then to actually do that, stick with it, and then become like legendary band, that's fucking wild to me, man.
There's all these bands that it's funny like that. I'm sure they know, but like in the whole history of the world, like these bands that are so influential that maybe your next door neighbor has never heard of, or these people have never heard of. And I've always wondered what that's like to have that sort of level of like fame and infamy to you, where what's the most you're more famous than rich, you're more known and notable. But like at the same time, like if at least in America, these guys going down the street, they could go to the store, no one would bother them, no one would have that thing. But like they hold such power and weight. I'm always fascinated by that level of like achievement in life.
I kind of think that's the best, that's the perfect. If I was gonna be in a band or something, and I was like, okay, what's the level of known that I want to be? I want to be able to go to the grocery store and not be bothered, but I also want to be like every once in a while, some dude loses his shit and goes, "Oh my god, you're the so and so dude." You know what I'm saying? Like, "Oh, you're
Yeah,
the singer of this band," and it's like, okay, like in the right spot, this dude's probably mobbed by people, but like
I've
everyday life,
I've always thought being punk rock famous was like the right amount of famous that people. That's the amount of famous people actually want. Like when they want to be
oh,
famous.
almost certainly,
Yeah, and it's exactly like you said, where like and you see it like again on Twitter or something where you'll see like someone's on a bus with like legendary punk rock musician and they're just there like in the corner, like that guy sold a bazillion records that collab with all these people and they're just kind of there, but they can kind of be with that nondescript way, the way that even like a pop star from the '80s probably can't because they would just be so dang recognizable.
dude. No, there's no way that a pop star from the '80s, bro. It would be hell.
Now, what's got to be bad is if you're like this level of fame and you still are just recognized all over the place, so you don't even get that personal peace of mind, but you don't really
Right?
get to monetize it to the same level. That might be the worst of both worlds. But that's like the people I think in modern times that get famous for like dumb stuff on the internet but have no skills. So then there's nothing really to sell after you just sort of know who they are and know that they're awful or whatever. Uh,
Dude,
I don't know why I'm comparing Coxbar to these influencers, but
is is Paul Simon, is how do you say his last name? Simonon?
Simonon from the Clash.
Simonon? Yeah. He's still alive, right? I think
So.
so.
I
I
thought
thought I
only Joe
saw
Strummer was passed away, but
so okay, so my reason for asking that is because I saw a video the other day and I didn't know if it was like a new video or an old video, but I'm pretty sure it was him. And he walked up on these two kids playing a Clash song, like busking, playing a Clash song, and he started singing the song with them, right? And I think the kids recognized him, but nobody else on the street did. And I thought, and that's exactly what we're talking about. And I was like, oh shit, that's exactly the kind of famous that would be awesome. Is that these two kids are like, oh my god, it's Paul Simonon. How do you say it? Simonon?
so I don't know because Joe Strummer would say like Simone or something like that, but I don't think that's how you would say it. I'm not
Well,
sure.
Paul, then, okay, no disrespect. I just pronounce things terribly all the time. Anyways, those kids are like, dude, look who we're talking to right now. And then everybody else is just walking by, not realizing that if you played some songs that he's written, you would go, oh, I know this song. Like most people would know at least one Clash song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But,
that is kind of ideal because people are still enjoying your art and getting
right?
the feeling off of the thing you made, but they don't necessarily have to know your name or what you're doing or what you're up to.
Man, life is fucking weird, isn't it? Some of
Mm-hmm.
this, all this stuff is so strange. I'm not gonna even like fuck around, dude. This is a 10 for me. Like this album is one of my favorite records of all time. I'd say I don't know where it would actually rank, but it would be in my top 10, probably top 5. Oh man, if I had to sit down and actually make a top 10 punk rock records list, That's harder to do because like I could just put all Rancid's albums on there and I wouldn't be too mad about it. But like, whew, I think we should try to do that soon. Top 10 punk albums.
That'll be a hard one, but that's a fun challenge.
You want to try to tackle that in a couple weeks?
Yeah,
Let's do that. That's kind of a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that then, and we'll see when I bring this album up again because I'm sure it's going to be on there.
Because I'm always updating this list in my head, but when I'm actually forced to say it, like there's only 10 slots. What are you gonna?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, wow, that's 10 albums. How am I going to tackle this? This will be fun. This will be real fun because it's weird because a band that might be in your top 5 may not have a top 5 album, but a band that's not in your top 5 may have an album that's there. Oh, that's sketchy. Son of a bitch. I think I might have just put myself in a hole.
Well, not every band is a great album band. Yeah, that's the truth.
I
mean,
that's very true. Very, very true.
Yeah.
Dude. Man, I feel like we had a pretty good conversation on these albums. I hope people don't disagree. I'm very self-conscious right now. They fucking roasted me in the comments about the other band, and I totally didn't think they were going to. But whatever, man. Ultimately, I don't really care, but I get in my head a little bit sometimes. If I cared a lot, I wouldn't put the videos up, would I?
Yeah, you wouldn't be on the internet if you cared that much.
Bro, if I cared that much, I certainly wouldn't have a YouTube channel because, well, I tell you, it's the wild, wild west in this place. Hey, to all the super punkers out there, man, go get them. Good for you, buddy. Good for you. I'll never be as punk as you, and I don't want to. I like to smell good. Bro, people are weird.
Maybe you should go like reverse and go like as you get into like your 50s and stuff and start becoming like more of a hardcore punk.
Just like get all crusty and gross, quit showering and shit. Grow out some dreadlocks that are all thin because my hair is all thin.
But like no one can claim it's a phase because like clearly you've reached full maturity, you know?
Right? Dude, it's funny, man. I think that look, dude, here's my actual critique of that stuff is that people are passionate, man, and they like this is why it doesn't really bother me after about a minute. Is because really all it is people are passionate. If that same person that was mad at me in the comments met me in real life and talked to me about this for even 5 minutes, they would understand me immediately and they wouldn't have an issue with me. And I know that. Even if they don't want to admit it, I know that. So it doesn't really bother me, but it does sting a little bit because I think like, man, this is a community, dude. Why are we doing this to each other? But, you know, I shit on my friends all the time. So what am I talking about? Hell yeah, dude. A couple of weeks we'll do top 10 punk albums list. That's we got to try to see if I can get you and Nitty on a show together during the summer.
Yeah, we need like a panel show of all of us doing something ridiculous.
Yeah. How annoying can we be? I think we get there, dude. Pretty annoying.
I've never watched one of your guys' shows all the way through. It's like I always see your topics. I think that's really cool, but I think I have like this jilted, like, I don't like to see what the other person kind of thing that I got going on.
Yeah,
it makes no sense. I got no problem with the guy, and I like your guys' topics. You guys are usually talking about albums I like, but I'm just always like, oh yeah, that's,
dude. I wonder if he does the same thing. I bet he does.
He's probably much less weird about these things. He's probably much
I don't know, maybe, dude.
And it's nothing on him. It's just like, oh yeah, that's the other guy that he does that's the other non-famous person he does podcasts with.
Right.
Well,
right. I mean, if every time you bring up the wrestling thing, I'm always like, oh, I forgot he does that. And I'm like, man, we should do more stuff. And I'm like, that's fucking stupid. It's good the way it is. Like it's the same feeling. I think I'm like, I don't know if jealousy is the right word, but it's like a little bit of resentment, maybe. No, jealousy is probably the better word. It's like, man, like, oh, man. And I feel like there are albums that I tell Nitty I want to cover that I know. I'm like, fuck, dude, I should ask Rob if he wants to cover this too. And like, I don't care. I'll talk about it with 2 different people. It don't matter to me. And, you know, it does take a little bit of speaking up sometimes. Maybe I don't know. If you see something you really like, just tell me. I'll do a part 2. I don't care. Like it doesn't bother me at all.
I can't think of any specific. Well, other than you guys have done AFI, Lagwagon, and Pennywise, I'm like, oh come on, dude. Those are
those
ours.
Like your favorites. Like yes. The reason some of this stuff, man. It's like spur of the moment. I'm terrible about like planning this out like 6 months or so. But I'll be like, oh, that happened. Hey, we should just do this. That's how.
Yeah, you and I have like 2 years now of having to keep track of what we talked about before.
Dude, I have already gone back and been like, oh, I'm gonna see if Rob wants to cover this, and then I'll like maybe an hour go by. I'm like, wait a minute, and I'll go back and look. Son of a bitch, we already talked about that. But you know,
I know there's some episodes I hope get lost because I just like. I'm remembering like my takes from a certain day or something. I'm like, hope that one.
That's the beauty of doing this is that my opinion changes at least a little bit fairly often.
Mhm.
My top 10 punk bands right now, outside of like 1 through 4, actually it is different because I say like in the last 5 years, maybe 2 years, Coxbar's moved from like 8, 9, or 10 all the way up to like 4. So like my list has changed. So and also you discover new kinds of music. Like if I was to tell you my top 50 albums of the last 2 years, it would blow your mind because it would be nothing. It would have almost nothing to do with bands that we love. Like
Mhm.
it might include that Rancid album and it might include that Alkaline Trio album. Other than that, it would be all shit that we didn't know 2 years ago. So, you know, it's a weird thing, man. I love this shit, bro. I could talk about it all day, every day, which is why I do. Yeah, I'm trying to do some shorts now. I'm gonna start doing shorts because I think I have an idea, a way to do them that is pretty easy.
Mhm.
Just show a record off every day. I can make a 30-second video. I'm trying to like make sure I stay on top of like what I'm doing, man. If this is gonna be my job, which obviously it is at this point, I need to make sure I can and just every little opportunity that I take it and do it right. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
We need something on YouTube. Like I've seen like stuff on TikTok that's similar to like the content you do that's in that short format, but I haven't seen anything on like YouTube Shorts that really has that space covered.
You talk about like showing a record off and be like, yeah, this record is from like how do you think I should approach it?
Yeah, well, and that's what I've always struggled with trying to think of that is how do you get like this sort of like album review stuff into like a bite-sized like how you're sort of featuring. I don't know. You just have to pick the right criteria. You know what I mean? Like this is really the I would think.
So what I was thinking, nobody's watching this shit right now. So what I was thinking was, I always get paranoid. It doesn't matter, dude. I'm not gonna have any original ideas. Nobody does. I was thinking of showing an LP, maybe like holding it up. It's like a 2-second shot of me holding it, and then it cuts to it playing on the turntable,
Mm-hmm.
and then while it's playing, a song's playing, and then on the screen in text, it's like whatever album, whatever year, top 3 songs. Da 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 da. That's the short. That way, it could be like 20 to 30 seconds. From all the little bit of research that I've done, 30 seconds and lower, or like a minute 5 and longer. Like 30 to 65-second window is terrible for some reason. I don't really understand why, but I do
maybe
know that
people kind of swipe off it if it's.
I guess so, man.
Yeah.
I did a 7-second video the other day and it got like 35,000 views. So like, I get it. They need to be short, but like fucking A. And it was an awesome video too, because it was a guy jumping off a turnbuckle. It was a singer Haywire doing a flip into the crowd. It was badass, dude. I was so happy that I filmed that. And I got really lucky because I almost left, but my friend Gabe Wells, shout out Gabe Wells, singer of Pride Kills, he basically talked me into staying. He's like, dude, you don't want to miss this show. It's in a crazy venue, and it's gonna be one of those shows we're talking about for years. And I was like, man, it's fucking hot in there because it was in a metal building and it was like 500 something people, no windows, no AC, no fan, no doors open. It was just a big giant box. And it was a wrestling ring and they were playing on that. Every single fucking band member from almost every band had their shirt off, dude. It was so fucking hot, that place. And I just powered through it and filmed it. And I was standing by the door so I could get like a little breeze, but it was miserable, dude. I don't know how the kids were in that mosh pit. I just don't. I mean,
having the time of their lives.
Yeah, dude. Shout out to the kids, man. Shout out to the fucking kids, bro. Hell yeah. This is a good talk, man. I missed you, bro. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been almost a month.
That's ridiculous. We'll try to do one in like 2 weeks from now with the top 10. That'll be a good time, brother. Well, anything you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No.
Hey, how's your boy doing?
Doing better. Had a few appointments last week and everything was still in the positive. We get the big surgery next month. Or not big, but the next one. So
cool, man. I'm glad I thought to ask. I think about it randomly and it'll be like 10:30. I'm not gonna text this man at 10:30 and go, how's your kid? But awesome, man. Well, if you need anything from me, holler at me. Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. We'll be back with another episode of the Punk Rock Review podcast. Top 10 punk albums, I guess, for us. This is gonna be a fucking awesome episode, honestly. It'll be fun because I bet our lists are gonna be pretty different, with the exception of maybe two, maybe 3.
Except for the number one.
That's what I'm thinking. I think other than that, it's gonna be pretty different, I would imagine. But awesome, man. All right, Rob. Talk to you soon, bud.
Later.
All right, later, everybody.